Welcome to the Digital Agency Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Englander. So today I'm very excited to welcome back who I will be so bold as to call a friend of the show, Brent Weaver in Chile, Colorado. So if you don't know Brent, you really ought to. He's on a mission to help 10,000 digital agency owners achieve freedom in business and life by helping them own their market. He's the founder and CEO of UGURUS, which is a business training and education company dedicated to this mission. He also hosts the Digital Agency Show. Good for you for nabbing the Digital Agency Show without any other verbiage in there, nice and early. He's also in a partnership with Unlimited WP, which is a scalable white label WordPress development team to help digital agency owners. He's also a brand ambassador with Cloudways, and perhaps we'll get into that. So Brent, welcome back.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks, Dan.
There's so much to dig into. I think that one topic that's almost like a fractal, like you look at it and it just gets more and more complicated and more expansive, is specializing. It's sort of one of these things that has come up with our clients and with agencies we talk to and continues to come up. So I'd love to dig into that a little bit. Like getting into 2025, we're recording this early December 2024. How do you think about specialization for agencies? Why is it important? And what do you think it's going to look like in the next year or more?
It's a good topic, good softball. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's probably a business case, right, for not specializing with in regards to like diversification is something that I often hear people talk about, or getting bored or not wanting to have all their eggs in one basket. And it's an interesting argument. I think generally you look at what's happening with AI and the web, and the people that are winning the most are usually the most specialized. I mean, I think you can build a business that's somewhat anti-fragile, not as a specialist, but I also think that if you specialize and go hardcore within a specialization, and if for whatever reason the market tilts or turns or tacks and that area of expertise isn't valued anymore, I do think there are a lot of meta skills that you attain through specialization, especially when you're focused on a market. Like for me personally, it's become a lot easier to gain traction and scale up in a niche the more times I kind of went through the motions within different markets. Like I currently work with digital agencies. This is our 13th niche that we kind of experimented with and kind of eventually married. And even in that space, there's kind of this niche within a niche within a niche, right? You start to get more understanding of a market, and you start realizing like actually how vast and big individual markets are. And then also when you start to specialize, you oftentimes start finding that even within your specializations, there are kind of unique sub-specializations and different cross sections of that. And so if I see the people that are by and large having the most success in terms of scale up, they always have some type of deep specialization. I think there is a play once you get to a certain size, and we're talking about probably like tens of millions of dollars, right? Where you can actually start to build more of a portfolio vision where you have multiple divisions or multiple companies, and you can essentially have like sub CEOs that are like running different kind of business units. But I think for the general small agency entrepreneurs running sub $1 million businesses, I don't think you can specialize enough.
Yeah, it's almost like the Russian nesting dolls where you just keep finding smaller and smaller niches within each one. Would you mind elaborating on how to make this more tangible? Like how have you guys at UGURUS chosen to specialize within the agency vertical over the course of time?
A lot of it's been, some of it is our services, right? What we help people with, right? We're a coaching and training company. We're not a done-for-you services company. Even within that space, right, we have certain frameworks that we would kind of lean into, or areas within a business that we're going to help coach and consult on. And then we definitely spend a lot of time on persona specialization. So the type of customer that we help and the type of customer we don't help. So for example, up until this year, we did not help customers that were less than $100,000 a year in revenue, and we didn't help customers that were more than, let's say, $3 million a year in revenue. So you had to have like an established agency in order to work with us. I even got like a negative review one time on our Facebook account because I turned somebody away because they weren't doing at least 10K a month in business. And again, it wasn't like personal. It was just we knew from past experience, like our like law of averages for customers that we'd helped below that revenue was just like not good. We didn't feel confident in our ability to deliver on our value proposition for agencies of that size. And so, that's kind of how we've approached that specialization. And initially, UGURUS was 100% focused on web professionals. We did not work, like people would come to us for SEO, people would come to us as branders or content creators or ad specialists, and we would say, nope, just web agencies. And we maintained that specialization until about 2017. So 2012, 2017, all web agency focused. And then we had kind of enough momentum there, and we were getting so much demand, so many asks, that we did start to widen that out to like agency owners. But you look at what that requires, right? Even just opening up a specialization or a focus like that, we had to change our ads. We had to change our landing pages. We had to retool and train our salespeople. We had to improve our product to speak to other things. Just take something like a website proposal template as an example. If you're a branding agency and you come in wanting to learn how to sell, and I hand you a website proposal template, you're going to be like, hey, where's the branding template? Where's the SEO template? Where's the pay-per-click template, right? All of our mentors at the time were all web agency owners. They were not SEO. They were not branders. And so on the fulfillment side, right, just opening up your specialization, even just that much, required a pretty large rework of our entire business to be able to support that. And I think that's the thing that people don't realize with going broad. They think about themselves as the agency owner, like I can support all these different types of businesses, but they might not be thinking about their team and their systems and their processes. And so I think that, we've approached it very much from a persona perspective, but you can specialize within a persona, you can specialize within a skill set, you can specialize within a result. I think one thing that's interesting, Dan, to give people some context, if you just take a market like dentists, there's like 100,000, give or take, dental practices in the United States. And that includes a handful of like subtypes of dentistry. To run $1 million a year agency, you need 30 clients paying you $3,000 a month. I mean, most dental practices could afford a $3,000 a month retainer, even with one or two practicing dentists, right? So that's a lot of agencies that you can have within that space. So that means you need to specialize beyond just dentists, right? You do need to think about, how do you stand out? How do you differentiate yourself in a market that's likely competitive?
Yeah, that's great. And that's really helpful. I want to sort of think about like, what are some of those first steps the agency can take? And I'll color in the lines a little bit. We've had clients where what's pretty common is a situation where it's like, okay, there's these 3 verticals we work with. They have things in common. Maybe it's like healthcare, B2B tech, and education or something like, high compliance verticals. But, the site is kind of showing off maybe a handful of different services, bunch of different clients, bunch of different verticals. And I think there's a lot of this kind of like hand-wringing about where to even begin this process. And do you have any thoughts on that and just kind of how to get out of that situation or get off on the right course?
And websites are certainly a representation of what a business is, but at the same time, there's a lot of different ways that we can route that traffic. But, traffic doesn't just arrive at your website. It's not like we just build it and they will come, right? I mean, maybe that was early web, but, there's a lot of people that are out there trying to get people's attention. And so you get traffic to your website or landing pages or campaigns, right, through some type of campaigns or strategies, right? So you're going to, whether you're going to Google, whether you're going to events, whether you're going to a paid media source like LinkedIn or Meta, you're putting money or time into a marketing strategy and it's driving traffic to your website. And so I stress a lot less about what my website says, and I stress a lot more about what are our growth strategies? Like, what are we doing to acquire new traffic and new attention? Is it going to be through Google and SEO? Okay, sure. What keywords are we going after? And I think that's where you have to go, okay, well, what market are we going after? What kind of keywords are they looking for? Are we just going after really broad services? Are we going after geographic locations? Are we going after any kind of specific markets? I could assume that, leveraging our dentist analogy, if I was going to use SEO, I would assume that a dentist practice or an office manager at a dentist that was looking for a new website or a lead generation service or something like that might go to Google and type in things like dental marketing, dental websites. And so, that's where if you're doing that work, that traffic is going to be going someplace. Obviously, if it's going to a page on your website, that page should speak very fluently to that target persona and target market. On the ad front, you have incredible control over where people go. Do they even go to your website? Do they go to a subdomain? Do they go to a separate brand? And so I obsess a lot more about where my traffic is coming from than trying to meet everybody's satisfaction through the website. It's like our first attempt at niching was we wanted to focus on nonprofits. At the time, our clientele were split kind of between small businesses We had a few corporate clients and nonprofits. Nonprofits accounted for about 30% of our business. And we got really good results for them. And we had these great long-term contracts. Like we'd get a contract with a nonprofit and we would like have to try hard to like get them like make them go away. Like once we were doing their website and doing their digital marketing, it was like we were just their firm, right? The churn was incredibly low. And so we were like, okay, we're gonna niche down. Everybody tells us to niche. So we changed our website from we make great websites to we make great websites for nonprofits. And then we clicked the keyboard back and we're like, we're going to let the traffic, let the leads flow in, right? And what ended up happening in practice was we lost 70% of our leads because we didn't change anything about where we got our traffic. We just simply changed like the last step of the funnel. Now, the leads that we got that were nonprofit, they maybe were a little bit more like warm to us. We're like, oh yeah, it sounds like you guys work with a lot of nonprofits, right? But it didn't actually help us get any more leads, which was the problem that we were trying to solve. We were trying to grow leads, and instead we cut out, 2/3 of our traffic. And in hindsight, what we ended up doing within another niche called educational consultants was we didn't change our website at all. We built a separate landing page, a separate kind of sub-brand, and we went to events and we built partnerships inside of that market. And we drove that traffic to our sub-brand. And that was the biggest like initial win for us within niching. We got like 30 customers in 6 months, and it didn't affect our core agency business at all, right? Because we thought traffic first, like where are we going to get the audience? Where are we going to get the customers? And less about like, our brand and our identity. Like, what does it mean for us to launch a sub-brand? What is that going to do? I think we spent like 2 hours on a logo. We spent like 3 hours on a landing page. The initial landing page was, we help educational consultants get more leads and clients. We're, in the process of launching. If you want more information, fill out the contact form below. And that was like it. And maybe there was like a testimonial or something like that. That was it. And I think we had like 10 or 15 clients before we actually updated it to a full website. And so I think you can do some really lightweight focus things early on within specialization without feeling like you've got to like change your whole identity, right?
Yeah, I think you hit on some really good stuff there. One, and like we're helping clients with this in the context of outbound. And I talk about this a lot and then you mentioned the advertising example. Having to do that makes you answer the questions, I think, faster and more efficiently than if you like got out a whiteboard and you're like, who are all the places we could possibly work, right? Like, and thought of it that way. So I think that's really valuable. To kind of like shift gears a little bit, it's almost, and I thought of this because you initially started with web agencies and that sort of thing. That seems like, by stereotype, and I don't know if it's true, like one of the harder agency services to sell because of AI, globalized workforce, et cetera. For those that are could be web or could be something that's more creative, like what are you seeing to work? Like what does it take to differentiate aside from just specialization? Like what does it take to sell a service like that now?
Yes. Web, I think all agency services right now are undergoing some pressure from artificial intelligence. I think for those that have spent a lot of time, the people that haven't spent very much time with AI are really stressed about AI. The people that have spent a lot of time with AI are less stressed about AI because they can see the limitations and the things that they might be like pretty clear that AI is not coming for the full stack anytime soon because of just issues with quality and accuracy and some other things like that. But in terms of differentiation, ultimately, like clients want results. Our agency, Unlimited WP, which actually we that business did get acquired over the summer, and that business is now part of a larger outsourcing outfit called E2M. But that business was focused on WordPress development services for digital agencies. So we kind of had that market focus, and then we also had the discipline focus on top of that of like, we just do WordPress. And really the problem that we were solving for agencies was kind of an unsexy like HR problem, right? Which is finding and hiring and retaining WordPress developers, especially in a business like websites where you might sell 2 or 3 websites in a month, and then you're busy working on those and you're not selling new sites. And then maybe you have a month gap. Maybe you're working on some marketing projects. Maybe you're working on some SEO projects. Maybe you're doing some other stuff. And so you might not have a need for a full-time WordPress developer. And then 2 months later, you might have the need for like 3 WordPress developers. And so we created a very flexible subscription service for WordPress developers where you could kind of come in and get a fractional developer for a quarter of a day or a half a day or a full day for a membership. And you could upgrade, downgrade, cancel those memberships on a month-to-month basis, or you get some discounts for some longer-term commitments. So we obsessed about, while a lot of our kind of frontline team obsessed about WordPress problems, our leadership, the CEO, Ronak Patel, and myself, we obsessed a lot about the real value that we were providing to agencies, which was flexibility. We were also abstracting a layer away from their business in regards to hiring and HR and people management. So they didn't have to deal with like going out and finding and vetting good WordPress talent, right? We provided that to them as a turnkey service. And we also looked at a lot of like really basic like communication paradigms between outsourcing. So like how many, we called them hops, but like when you would assign an outsourcer a project, this is a really common situation, but let's say you put the project brief in today, you go to sleep, they come back and ask you a bunch of questions. While you're asleep, you come in the next day, they haven't done any work because they need clarifications. You then provide a whole bunch of feedback to their questions, and then you get that submitted by end of your day. Well, they don't get that till the beginning of their next day, right? And so there kind of becomes this issue of like hops between the agency and the outsourcing provider. And you can create these situations where really simple projects end up taking 2 or 3 weeks because these hops aren't happening in real time. And so we would put a huge amount of effort into figuring out, okay, what are ways that we can cut down the number of hops per delivered project? Could we have could we pay some WordPress developers more money or different money to have, to work overnight? Could we put project managers in the United States or in South America where there's better time zones to ask all those questions ahead of time? And so I think as AI started coming into play, we started leveraging AI to do some of that work for us to accelerate those conversations. And so I think regardless of what your discipline is, clients care about results. They care about money. They care about time. They care about impact. And so if those are kind of the basic things that you're obsessing about, whether it's with branding, with SEO, with paid traffic, I don't think that outsourcing or AI are scary. Now, sometimes you do have to kind of put on a little bit of a business owner, I don't want to say like a ruthless mindset, but you do have to look at things and say like, is this thing that we're doing, is it adding value to our clients? And not just like touchy-feely value, but like, can I connect this to some type of business outcome or business result? And sometimes you're not really clear about how that stuff works at first, but you start pressure testing it. And really quickly, you might say, hey, this requires further investigation. Like, I think this is a good thing that we do. I'm not sure exactly how it fits into the results narrative yet, but I think it's good. Let's keep doing it. Or you start pressure testing it and you're like, this thing that we do, it doesn't matter, right? We had like one of my members at UGURUS, right? They would spend 6 months building websites for like contractors, like plumbers, electricians, et cetera, right? They would, and what was the contractor really trying to do, right? They were trying to solve like a lead gen problem or whatever, right? And they'd spend 6 months. And I kept pushing them, like, your clients do not care. Like, they don't want that. They don't want to spend 6 months. Maybe they want to spend 30 days, right? And they kept being like, no, it's got to be custom design and this and that. And I'm like, they don't care. They don't care, right? And eventually they got the memo and they started to work on cutting down the time it took from deal signing to launch. And they've been able to get that down to just a couple of weeks, and their business is exploding. And they now see, and that was really hard to get there, to still provide a really high quality, custom, personalized product, but at a much quicker pace. And now I'm starting to imagine, like with AI tools and stuff, especially like being able to create like a pseudo AI customer success team member where you could have a voice bot sit down with a client for maybe 30 minutes and ask them lots of the questions that we would do in an onboarding. And they could do that at any time of day. I mean, that's something that I think could help an agency collect all of the material and the content they need from a client. And, maybe instead of spending 2 weeks to launch that custom site, and I'm not talking about using a website builder, like those are cool too, right? Yeah. But using like just getting all that information and research and all that stuff from your client and from their business in a nice, neat package so that a developer or designer can sit down and they can work and they aren't interrupted by client delays or client feedback, right? And so I'm really excited to see some agencies do that stuff. But it's always pursuing those kind of core things, right? Like, can we help somebody make more money? Can we help them save some time? Can we help them get better results? And I think if you're obsessed about that stuff, you're going to do really well.
Yeah, I really like that. And just to kind of summarize or piece that apart, I think that the tendency with a lot of agency owners, and probably myself too, is to be like, to differentiate, we need quality. We need, it's the people, it's the shininess of the website. It's this thing we do that nobody else does over here. But the reality is like, it's a lot of combination of the unsexy stuff that in the aggregate produces these outcomes, like faster time to result, better ROI, better packaging, like just letting people pay the way they prefer to pay for the same thing, and finding those sorts of things out. So to dig into that a little bit, I think a lot of agency owners are kind of there accidentally. Like you have the classic designer that starts the agency, or dev or whatever. And it's not, in my experience, like making these really strong, like well differentiated offers is a lot of marketing skill and a good amount of packaging, but it's also a lot of operational skill. It's a lot of being able to drill down and figure out these systems. And you may or may not have the team that can do that, right? You may have the team that can follow the SOP once it's perfect, but the building of those systems is kind of entrepreneurial. So I want to put that back on you. I'd love to hear like whether you agree or disagree, and what building that skill set might look like for agency owners.
Yeah, I think I'm a big Hormozi fan. I think there's he's been publishing some content that's creating some lovers and some haters, which I love. I love that in and of itself, right? As a marketer, I think there's a lot of people that have read $100 million offers and getting some skills on how to create a really compelling promise to potential clients. I've seen some killer offers out there. I mean, really hands down, like awesome stuff. But there's a lot of offers that are not holding water, meaning that people are making promises they can't keep, and they are relying on refunds. They're relying on 30 days. They're relying on, hey, don't get results, don't pay them further, right? They're relying on a lot of things like that to kind of stay in some type of offer integrity, right? So you have these businesses that they're creating these killer offers, like, I'm going to get, 100 leads for you in 30 days or you don't pay anything, right? And or whatever, right? Like, we're going to help you double your conversions or you don't pay anything, right? And I think there's a lot of people that are making very bold, differentiated promises right now in the marketplace. And there are some people that are delivering exceedingly well on those types of offers. And then there's the vast majority that are not. And that's been our experience. At UGURUS, we talk to thousands of agencies per year. And the amount that we've heard going through some type of program or done for you service and not seeing any kind of result from that is really, really high. We had one of my members, they were with a lead gen company for a year, and finally the lead gen company, fired them as a client because they were like, we can't get you results. And we've hired probably a dozen different, AI lead gen services, scraping services, outbound teams, emails, et cetera. And the amount of them that we've seen actually get any kind of measurable result, and also for our clients. And we ask UGURUS members, we've got several hundred agency members in our community, and we ask them about these things, like who has gotten results through these types of bold promises. And it's like vapor, man. It's really, really weird. And so I do think there's a lot of people that are getting savvy on figuring out how to craft a message that will get a person to buy something. And that craft, I think, is leveled up because of Hormozi and some other folks out there. But the craft of how to actually figure out how to deliver on a bold promise, I do think that that's something that needs some more work in the marketplace. I think that's something that I'm finding that fewer and fewer people are spending equal or greater time obsessing about that part of the equation. And so I think when I look at myself, something that we've done a lot on is really worked on, if we have a new MVP offer, we bring in kind of a cohort of champion customers. We keep things very, very close to our chest. We go slow with those initial customers. We oftentimes do that work for highly amounts of discounts or free work or in exchange for some referrals. And so we really try to figure out how to get our kind of coordinating done well. And then once we feel like we have something, we start to kind of open that up to, more and more groups. And I think right now, I don't know if it's just the general market sentiment, or maybe I'm a little bit jaded. I think people are coming up with a killer offer. They get a couple sales and then they're like, hit it hard. They post some big brag screenshots at how much, how fast they scaled to $1 million run rate, right? And then you don't hear the post in 6 months when they're like, yeah, we're actually, we're pivoting to some other business now.
Yeah, it's funny because I can talk a good amount about that because we were, a done for you lead gen business for a lot of years. And we tried to, we did our best to like not overpromise and say like, here's based on your industry, here's the forecast we would probably see, try to kind of under promise and over deliver with it. And then more recently, we pivoted to a training model so agencies can actually own the system as opposed to renting it and that sort of thing. And the mental model that I've sort of been thinking about lately is like, there's these pitches for things that are marketed as hard that you have an infinite number of customers for. The Green Berets is an example, the Navy SEALs, the CIA. They don't have to say this is going to be easy, right? They're like, this is going to be incredibly hard and you probably won't make it. And they still get recruits. So that's a weird metaphor because like a business service isn't going to be obviously be like that. But what I've been trying to do is really like grill people and say, how important is this? Like, do you really want to grow? Why do you want to grow? And say like, this is going to be hard and it's going to be less hard with us, but it's still going to be hard. And that's been working, I think, just as well, if not better, than saying this is going to be easy and you click a button, here come the leads.
Yeah. I mean, anybody that tells me, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit long in the tooth. I've been in this field for long enough. Like anybody that tells me that I get these emails like every day, like, hey, Brent, I see you're running a coaching and training business. I'm going to get you 30 clients risk-free, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I'm like, but do you know about this market? Like, I spend $50K a month on Facebook ads and we are testing funnels all the time. And I have a 4-person outbound setting team and I have 3 amazing closers that have been trained by some of the best teams out there, like, 7th level sales and Cole Gordon. And, we sit around and obsess about this stuff and we obsess about the numbers and we obsess about it. And I know my CPAs, I know my customer acquisition costs, I know what we're spending and how many smart people have been in rooms working on these funnels. And somebody's telling me that they can do it. Like, somebody that has this like, whatever, 3-person business and the Philippines or whatever, right? Is telling me that like, this is so easy. We get you 30 clients a month guaranteed. And I'm just like, you're so full of it, right? Or maybe I am, right? Maybe it is a blind spot, but I think it is hard. And I think that people that are trying to tell you that it's easy, and we've actually lost a lot of customers, Dan, because we have stopped selling people that, hey, you're going to get, like, we sell kind of a result over like 1 to 3 years. We tell people, hey, look, we've got some quick wins. Like, you're going to come in, like, we've got a handful of quick wins that we know that generally work and are going to make you feel good in the moment. But the big stuff, the big freedom is always going to come with like niching and scaling and systematizing and delegating and building in your team and your systems and whatever. And that's going to take, 6 months to a year. So, and people kind of go, oh, well, but I can go buy this other program and I can go there for 2 days. Like somebody recently told me they were going to go to an event for $5,000 and they thought that that was going to revolutionize their business. And I'm like, yeah, go do it, So we'll see. Yeah, but I think I think differentiation, it's important. I think though, at the small agency level, there is a lot of power in presence. When a lead is with you, they are not with somebody else. When you have somebody's attention, their attention is not with somebody else. So I'm less concerned about differentiation than probably most are. Like we get comments all the time like, oh, hey, UGURUS looks very similar to these other programs. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Like we probably are. But let's look at the team that's running these 2 programs, right? On one hand, the UGURUS team, 20 experienced, active agency owner mentors backed by a company like DigitalOcean. We have an incredible amount of freedom and resource to do the things that we do. And on the other hand, you might have a solopreneur consultant who entered the game, 3 months ago, right? And they have a very, very similar offer and pitch. And maybe even some of their marketing collateral is more refined and more sexy than ours. And in that way, I'm like, hey, what are the odds that you're going to be successful between these 2 programs, right? Like, I think being differentiated is good, but there's kind of more to the equation than that. And if somebody's on a sales call with you, if they're talking with you, I think that you don't have to stress too much about differentiation. Just focus on them, focus on how you're going to help them, focus on, helping them make the right decision for their business. And maybe working with you isn't the right decision for their business. And that's okay. Help just be really present and focused with them. And I think if you do that, you're going to get enough clients to at least get you to the like 6 or multiple 6-figure level. And then when you're doing $1 million and you have money to go blow $100,000 on a brand and positioning, then, definitely go do that. At least that's been our story.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It was made me think of how the changes that I've made in my head about like what sales is doing now versus what I thought of it as when I first started in my career in kind of an agency sales role back in the day. And I think that I used to think of these sales conversations as like, this is where we're persuading people or convincing them to do this thing or to come to our worldview and buy from us. And now I'm not exactly sure how to define sales, to be honest. I think it's something like it's in between. It's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of sorting. It's helping, obviously. It's, regardless of what people choose to do. And it's a little bit of orchestration. Like, hey, this is the process. This is what needs to happen when. These are the people that need to be involved. If you're not interested, let us know, right? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, though. Like, we're like in a situation where there's so much more information between buyers and sellers, and people are doing research before, during, and after these processes. Like, what do you feel like a salesperson should be up to or think about it? Yeah.
I mean, sales for me has always been about helping people. And I think that a big part of that is helping people to make an informed decision. You obviously, as a salesperson, you have an offer, you have a set of tools that are available to you as you're, within the business that you're supporting, a value proposition. And your job is to take people that have an interest, they have some level of awareness in a problem or a situation that they're in, take that interest and intent and basically figure out if there's a match between what their situation is and what your value proposition is, right? Is this somebody that we can help? Can we help them further through some type of paid engagement? And a lot of times in sales, that means that you find out that you can't help them, and you can help them by not helping them, right? You can help them by saying, hey, we're not a really good fit. Maybe you should be looking at some other things. And a lot of that might involve, educating a prospect about, what's going on within their business, right? It might involve doing some discovery, because a lot of people kind of show up and they actually don't really have great clarity about what their biggest challenge or pain or problem is. They have some feelings, right? But they might not fully understand that kind of root problem or the cause that's creating those symptoms. And salespeople, by and large, should be experts within the product or service that they're selling. And they should be able to help give a glossary of terms and a language to a prospect on how to understand the situation they're in. Just like when I go to a doctor is going to introduce new terms to me. They're going to introduce connections between those terms, how the body works, how these different viruses or that or the other work, and how that might be affecting me as an individual patient for them. And then what I can do about that, right? Here are your options. You can do these things. Now in the medical world, oftentimes those options are presented as the path, right? They're not really presented as options, but of course, as humans in a free society, we of course have free will, and we can choose things at every stage of any interaction with anybody. To me, that's always sales, is helping somebody make an informed decision and then relying on them to make a good decision and giving them that option. When I hear things like persuade, again, we can do things as salespeople to persuade. I probably have done many of them. I've probably done all of them, right? To try to persuade people to make a decision that maybe benefits us. I find the people that we persuade with a heavy-handed approach oftentimes don't end up becoming the best or greatest customers. The people that I help to come to a decision and they really had full agency or autonomy over that decision, and they made that decision with 100% of the information, and that information was accurate and with integrity, those folks often become, a great and amazing customers. And sometimes that means that people look you in the eyes and say, hey, I don't think this is a good fit for me. And I say, hey, okay. Is there anything else that I can help you get clarity on? Is there, can I have some understanding of that decision? Is it, and sometimes looking into those objections, like somebody might say, hey, I love this, but I just can't afford it. Right. And it's like, well, can you not afford the total amount, or is it the cash flow? Is it that it does not in the card financially? And if somebody says, I can't afford this at all, it's like, hey, any further that I would push on that is not respecting them as a customer. But if they said simply, yeah, I just don't have the upfront money for this, if it was available on a payment plan, I might be able to afford it, right? People do that every day with cars, right? They buy $40,000 and $50,000 assets when they don't have $40,000 and $50,000 in the bank. And so you could, a salesperson could say, well, look, we have payment plans, or we have credit, right? That would be a great job for a salesperson to educate somebody on the various ways in which they could secure your product or service, but then leveraging that kind of information in some type of manipulative way, right? That's kind of where you get into the part of sales that I think gets a bad rap. And Dan, I'm sure you follow some of the same people, but there are a lot of folks out there doing very high pressure sales. They are leveraging psychology to manipulate people. They are leveraging people's emotional states, their personal backgrounds, in order to get them to make a purchasing decision, to get a conversion when that might not be in that person's best interest. And those are the areas in which I don't see sales as a very helpful tool. And we just generally I definitely advise my team against that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a few ways to look at it. I mean, for one, it's unethical, and there's enough reasons not to do it just for that. But the other thing is, like, it tends to correlate with people selling to big giant markets where they can get away with having negative customer experiences, versus most of our clients are selling to B2B, generally more upmarket. Like, they can only do that but so many times before it catches up with them. So that's an issue. And I mean, one thing that I've been asking people when I sort of get the objection, not to us specifically, but to our area, which is outbound. And I think I borrowed this from our mutual friend, Greg Hickman, who might've gotten it somewhere else, is like just saying like, okay, like if I gave you $100,000 to put into one line item in the P&L, like where is it going? You can't split it up. Has to go one place. And then that'll be really helpful. And it'll be like, well, actually it should go to ops. It should go to this part of our service. And I'm not going to be able to convince them otherwise on that call. Like, the likelihood of me turning them away from that mindset, very slim, not really a good use of energy. But then what I can say is like, oh, do you want help there? Like, I know Brent over here, or I know Carl Sakis over there who can help in that regard. Like, should I make an intro for you? Right. And that makes things, that's a win. That's a win for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And two, like, and as I mentioned, like, I think you can identify, sometimes people come in and they have that mindset, right? Of like, I need help with ops and you sell a lead gen service. And I think a good salesperson will take that as, they might not take that as at face value, right? They're going to dig a little bit to understand like, okay, you want to make that investment in operations. Like, walk me through why that is. And you might start getting into, walk me through what's going on in operations. And again, I'm just playing like a mock scenario here that I've had several times, but it might turn out that their operational systems keep blowing up because the type of customer that they have coming into their business is highly variable. And so if an agency is serving one day a healthcare company, one day a B2B SaaS company, one day a dentist, one day a jewelry designer, one day a car salesperson, one day a government agency, right? Well, no crap, your systems are going to be a total train wreck. There's no positioning here. We don't have a consistent type of client coming in. We're having to reinvent the wheel on every single new project and client. And anytime you create a standard operating procedure, you're going to have a non-standard client come in and they're going to blow the entire system up. And now I lived this life for like 7 or 8 years where every client was unique. I was addicted to new. I was addicted to learning. And I was like in my early mid-20s. So that was fine, right? I didn't have any like dependence in my life, right? I could screw off in business and not have a strategy. But if I was a salesperson and I'd go, look, like, yes, your operation systems certainly need attention. But if you keep funneling, like from your lead gen system, if you keep funneling bad fit clients into your agency, no matter how much money you spend on operations, you're never going to solve that problem. And if they go, light bulb, you're right. That's exactly right. Like, I've been trying to find a way to explain this thing happening in my business. Maybe your service could help me, right? So that would be the power of like discovery and really getting down to those kind of root and core issues. And I'm not saying you do that work and you can create that narrative every time of tying it back to that root problem. And I think you as a salesperson have to be 100% committed to helping the customer and 100% unattached to the outcome. You can't go into a discovery conversation like that with kind of a false pretense, trying to help somebody when really, in fact, you're just trying to manipulate them into your offering. So I think as long as you find a real problem that maybe does impact an area of the business that you can help, I think that's going to be a way for you to stay aligned with your offer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. To shift gears completely before we get to the end of our time, it seems like a lot more agency owners that I talk to are thinking about acquisitions, either because there's perhaps more like Gen Xers and Boomers that are heading towards retirement, or just in general. And, you guys were acquired by Cloudways. If you wouldn't mind talking about your journey through that and just kind of how it came about, would love to learn more and kind of dig into how much of that might be an opportunity for agencies that have these intersections with technology in their respective niches.
Yeah. I mean, We were a strategic acquisition. They were a much bigger firm than us with a much faster growth rate. We served a customer, right? The persona that we served, digital agencies, was one of the largest cohorts of hosting clients within Cloudways. And one of the top things that Cloudways customers would say that they needed help with was getting more leads and clients. And Cloudways, as a hosting company, did not have like a product offering that would solve any problems in that way. And so we had been doing some, co-hosted webinars, and I was kind of a brand evangelist for Cloudways at the time, just doing stuff on their YouTube channel, with a little bit of time every week. And honestly, it was kind of a distraction for me. It was right around like COVID, like business, like the coaching world was kind of like turned upside down. A lot of our clients were under extreme stress within their businesses. And I think I was just kind of looking for a distraction while we were riding out that storm. And so, we started a partnership, and I think like a lot of things, that partnership was based on people and the people that were working together behind the scenes. Like we were just having a lot of fun. And I feel like I'm explaining like a date, like one thing led to another, but it was kind of that way, right? Like I started helping to run their evangelist team, and we started looking at the UGURUS mentor team as an extension of that evangelist team. A lot of the UGURUS customers were Cloudways customers. And so we started doing some co-promotions, and there was clear like service market fit. And for them it was like a drop in the bucket, right, to bring the UGURUS team on board. But they instantly got a ton of agency expertise in terms of knowledge of the market, knowledge of kind of the psychology of agencies. We kind of got a little bit of a marketing channel with the digital agency show, with the UGURUS customer base, and probably more at a more valuable level, the UGURUS got a distribution channel through the Cloudways space. So, Cloudways serves about 15,000 agencies. So we kind of had like a plug and play, like, in the last 10 years, the Cloudways channel for us has been the first channel that has competed effectively in terms of performance to Facebook ads. In terms of like Facebook and Instagram ads have been our like bread and butter lead acquisition, client acquisition. And the Cloudways channel for us actually became an equal player in that, which, great benefits to our like back of the house in terms of acquisition costs and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, we have big plans with that. I mean, it's been a couple of years now that we've been inside of that company. I do a lot of work within the Cloudways agency team and within the DigitalOcean agency ecosystem. But yeah, it's been good. I think everything that you've heard about working at a corporation is probably true, both good and bad. So I think me as an entrepreneur, sometimes I find, some of the things that I have to do as a good corporate citizen within a publicly traded company, some of those things are challenging or new, right? I kind of came in as like a mid-level team member. And so there was definitely a learning curve for me in that way. And finding opportunities to be entrepreneurial is, it's something that it happens less and less. There's more team management. How do we grow and scale this thing? And less concern on some of the things that had historically kept me up at night, right? Like our P&L or this or that. I mean, those things still are key parts of us in our growth narrative, but that conversation has certainly changed. And you can't do whatever you want. So that's a trade-off, right? You want to hire somebody, pivot, go to a different market, right? All that stuff requires lots of red tape. So it's been interesting.
It's a much bigger ship that has to be turned, right?
Yeah.
So makes
like
sense. Yeah.
There's, kind of back to your question of like more M&A happening, if I started over today, and people have asked me that, like what would I do differently? Or if I started an agency today, I certainly would look at M&A as a way to accelerate growth. I think there's a lot of distressed businesses out there that are run by accidental entrepreneurs that didn't mean to create a business, and maybe they want to get out of that business. And so I do think there's a massive opportunity out there to merge and acquire. And it's a totally different playbook to do that, but it's definitely a playbook that's out there in terms of like some of our members that have experienced the largest growth year over year. It's happened through acquisition, where instead of going out and finding 100 more clients, they acquire a competitor, acquire another agency, and they spend a year, merging that agency in. So they go $1 million business to a $2 million business, right? A $2 million to a $4 million, right? By simply acquiring those businesses. And one thing that I would say to anybody that's hearing that thinking, well, I could never do that because I don't have the capital. And there's lots of creative ways to finance and acquire businesses, because you're buying an asset, and assets, you can leverage assets to secure capital. You can do that through a variety of different ways, through owner finance deals, through SBA loans, through private equity, through friends and family loans. I mean, there's a lot of ways to come up with cash if that's what you want, if the deal economics are good. If the deal economics are bad, it's harder to come up with cash from other people, and you probably shouldn't be putting your own money in too, right? If the deal economics are bad, if you're driven by emotion, like, oh, I really want to buy this company because they're my competitor or something like that. If you're driven by emotion and the deal economics are not good, then obviously you should not be buying that company.
Yeah, to kind of like double click on that a little bit, how much are you seeing that, like what you went through or something comparable to that as an opportunity for agencies? So if you're like the agency and we serve health tech brands and we have all these inroads into health tech, are you a good potential acquisition for health technology, ABC or whatever?
I mean, we just had Marcel Petipas. He was a speaker at our U Summit event, and he was talking about, he had just come back from Dan Martell's SaaS Academy, and he was teaching SaaS entrepreneurs how to make services profitable. And a lot of SaaS companies are finding growth in 2024 to be hard, as most business and most growth is, right? We're not just getting valuations based on our ideas, but valuations based on fundamentals. Finding an extra, 30 or 40% growth every year is really difficult. And so we are seeing a lot of technology companies look into services as a way to add more revenue, monetize their existing base. And I think if you can find a strategic acquisition, it's going to open up your multiple a lot. I think if you're talking about a business buying a business for their book of customers, then you're looking at from an agency 1 to 3x your earnings. So if you're a $500,000 agency with $100,000 a year net profit, you can probably expect to be valued at somewhere between $100,000 and $300,000. Now, for most agencies who are building a business and they're reading entrepreneur highlight reels on Instagram, right? They might be disappointed by that number, that their $500,000 agency is only worth $200,000. But if you can find a strategic buyer, that multiple can go up to 3 to potentially 7x. There was an agency that was bought in South America. I can't remember the name of them, but they were bought for a 14x multiple. And it was simply because they had insane alignment and they had unique assets that were, the buyer wanted. And a business is always worth what people are willing to pay for it. But if you can find a strategic buyer, it can help you boost that multiple up a little bit. And also, the more set your business is in terms of like recurring revenue, systems, profit, right? The better your metrics look and probably perform for yourself, usually the more valuable that business is. So, hopefully, I think when you get to the $1 million plus net profit level, those multiples do push out to more like 4 to 5x, even for a non-strategic acquisition. But I think for sub-$1 million agencies, 1 to 3x earnings.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's really useful. Brent, this is always a pleasure. I learned a ton. To kind of close things out, like, what are you working on over the next few months? What are you excited about, and where can people go to learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, you can check out stuff at UGURUS.com. Of course, feel free to shoot me an email, brent@UGURUS.com. We've been running a recent series of AI events for agency owners called AI for Agencies. And those have been free webinars we've been hosting with our members and mentors, coming to present unique case studies on how they're leveraging AI for capacity, revenue, or profit gains. And so we give each agency like 10 to 15 minutes to show like a real world case study. So those have been really popular. Like, our attendance and registrations for those events have been off the charts. And so if you want access to the recordings of the 2 sessions we've run so far, just shoot me an email, brent@UGURUS.com. Happy to shoot you a link to those things for free, just ungated content. And of course, would love for you to register for future AI for Agencies events.
Awesome, man. That sounds really useful. I'm definitely going to dig into that. So let's do it again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.